accent's off.
There you go. Yeah. We have the same conversation.
Now I want to hear it.
Yeah. Steve, you should do stand-up.
I was thinking of your songs.
Yeah, I have a few on my phone. I can hold it up to the microphone.
Less than a minute.
So close, Bridget. You get to smack that gavel in just a second.
I know, I can't wait.
We don't want to cut too much.
Takes forever. I've had it for, well, it's a bad mouth.
Okay.
It's got to be the
Bad
mouse.
user.
Yeah.
Calling to order the Monday, February 2nd, 2026 meeting of the 41st Council of the City of Berkeley. Ms. Mitchell, please call the roll.
Councilmember Baker,
Here.
Councilmember Black, Councilmember Elrod,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Gavin,
Here.
Councilmember Hennan,
Here.
Councilmember Patterson,
Here.
Mayor Dean.
Here. Our first order of business is the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Motion made by Mayor Pro Tem Gavin
Second.
and seconded by Councilmember Baker. Are there any changes or corrections? Seeing none, Ms. Mitchell, please call the roll.
Elrod,
Yes.
Gavin,
Yes.
Hennan,
Yes.
Patterson,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Dean.
Yes, the agenda has been approved. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We've come to the portion of the meeting where anyone present may make comments about items that are not on tonight's agenda. When you come to the microphone, please state your name and city of residence. Please direct your comments to the chair. You have 3 moments to tell us what's on your mind and in your heart.
Thank you, Mayor. Joshua Hunter, Berkeley. The city certified today that no executed and filed oath of office exists for the city attorney. The city did not produce the lawyer's state bar licensing oath as a substitute. Because it's a licensing oath and it's not an oath of office under the charter or the Michigan Constitution. I have the FOIA certificate for the meeting record. But I would like to ask one clarifying question for the public record. Does city council have the authority under the Berkeley charter and Michigan Constitution to deem the oath of office unnecessary for administrative officers?
Yes.
Yes or no? So we heard someone cough yes up here. So I'd like to hear the legal explanation for that. I asked this as a follow-up to council's January 26th vote to deem the oath unnecessary for administrative office of city attorney. At the last meeting, section 8.2 of the charter was only read in part, and the constitutional oath requirement was not addressed on the record after I raised it during comment. Since then, the city's public communications have gone further, stating the council may deem the oath unnecessary for any administrative officer. So Mayor, this is why I'm glad Representative Price is here tonight. Since she is here, I respectfully ask of her to consider asking the Attorney General for a formal opinion on the constitutional oath of office requirements for municipal administrative officials, including city attorneys. To illustrate the need for clarity, the cities of Royal Oak and Clawson provided me their city attorney's oath of office last week, which I have here. Oak Park denied my request stating no oath exists, and likewise Berkeley denied my request stating no oath exists. So given these inconsistencies across municipalities, a formal Attorney General opinion would provide clear and consistent guidance. Thank you.
Thank you. In closing public comments, Ms. Mitchell, please read the items on tonight's consent agenda.
1, minutes of the regular city council meeting on Monday, January 26, 2026. Special city council meeting on Friday, January 23rd, 2026. and special city council meeting on Monday, January 26, 2026. 2, utilize Oakland County Cooperative Contract 011677/011678 with DVM Utilities for sewer lining services.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion made by Councilmember Baker
Second?
and seconded by Councilmember Hennan. Are there any corrections or additions? Seeing none, Ms. Mitchell, please call the roll.
Gavin,
Yes.
Hennan,
Yes.
Patterson,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Elrod,
Yes.
Dean.
Yes, the consent agenda has passed. Ms. Mitchell, please read item number 1 on tonight's regular agenda.
Recognitions or presentations from the consent agenda.
Seeing none, please read item number 2.
Legislative update from State Rep Natalie Price.
Welcome, Rep. Price.
Thank you, Mayor Dean. Thank you, members of council. Thank you for having me back. It feels good to be back, of course, in my family's hometown in Berkley. I have very fond memories of serving on city council not that long ago, but here now as state representative. So I am entering now my 4th year, my 2nd term as state representative. I represent all of Berkeley, all of Huntington Woods, most of Royal Oak, most of Birmingham, half of Beverly Hills, and little bits of Bloomfield Township and Southfield. It's the new House District 6. I try to come around each year, at the beginning of each year, to do a year in review, to let you guys know how the year went, what I feel need to be the priorities for the coming year, and that's what I'm here for tonight. But before I get into the general kind of standard year in review, I do want to let you know that I spent some time last week in Minneapolis, meeting directly with Minnesota legislators and community organizers. I made the decision to go because in this moment, state and local leaders, we need to witness what is happening, learn from people on the ground, and bring those lessons back to Michigan, so that we can better protect our communities and our democracy. We know that what happens in one state affects all of us. The work that's happening right now in Minneapolis will help shape how we organize, legislate, and hold those in power accountable here at home. And we're not just waiting to see what other states are doing. There is legislation in Lansing right now that we need to move immediately in response to federal overreach. And I have some slides. I might be jumping around my slides, but if you can go to the next slides, here are some examples of legislation. Oh, this is introducing me some more. Sorry. Okay, stop here. I should have reviewed the slides before I got up here. Before I get to specific response to ICE and federal overreach, these are just some baseline information to help give some context. So my first term, we had a Democratic trifecta in Lansing. We got a lot of really important work done. Now in 2024, the House is flipped to Republican control. So we have a split legislature in Michigan, similar to Minnesota. We just finished our least productive legislative year in history in terms of numbers of laws signed. That is something of which, as a member of the legislature, I'm deeply distressed and bothered by. There's so much important work that needs to be done, and we have not been able to accomplish it. Tariffs, as we know, are causing huge economic and revenue growth slowdown, and we have seen and are now bracing for the impacts of huge federal cuts to Medicaid, SNAP, and other state-run programs that we get funded mostly through the federal government. So I wanted to give that context. And now if you'll go on to the next one, please. Okay, some legislation that directly affects cities. So I supported local project disclosure and submission rules. I put the bill numbers up there. I thought you might be interested. These are also supported by the Michigan Municipal League, right? I'm a proud member of the Municipal Caucus in Lansing, advocating on behalf of municipal control and resources. I was also in support of creating the Public Safety and Violence Prevention Trust Fund. Now, One of the little challenges with municipal revenue this year, and this might come up in a slide again later, but we decreased constitutional revenue sharing, and we were told, oh, the cities will be happy because they'll get more public safety and violence prevention trust fund. They'll get more money for local roads. I want you to know that I am a voice of advocating for the constitutional. Because I've served on council, I know how important that you guys don't have that money being told where you have to spend it. Yes, money for public safety and violence prevention trust fund is important. Local roads are important, but you should be receiving those resources in addition to constitutional revenue sharing, not in lieu of it. So we'll get to more of that later. I voted against, and this is important, requiring grantees to cooperate with ICE. So again, Republican control of the House, Matt Hall, has been trying to push for municipalities who receive funding from the state to sign agreement to cooperate with ICE. And that's a big part of what I want to spend some time talking about, how harmful that is. That is an unfunded mandate. You guys don't have the resources to do the job of ICE. ICE is immigration control and enforcement. It's not public safety. It's not, those officers did not swear to protect the people in the communities. They have a very different role that is separate from public safety. And I feel it is very important that our municipalities not be required to do something outside of their scope, outside of their responsibilities, not only for not getting additional resources to meet the expectation, but having your current resources being held hostage until you cooperate. So I just want to let you know I voted against House Resolution 19. Okay, now go on to the federal response, ICE response legislation. So I did a version of this talk in Royal Oak a week ago, and they wanted all the bill numbers, and I didn't want to spend time reading them all to you, but I did put them up on the slide in case you're interested. This is all legislation that has been introduced by Democrats. Those are my colleagues' names. They've sponsored the bills, and I proudly co-sponsored all of these bills. So we recognize that we need to amend our state constitution to prevent the federal government from suspending our right to a fair trial. We need to allow state legislators to visit any Department of Corrections facility at any time without notice. We need to prohibit federal or state law enforcement officer from refusing to identify themselves or wearing a mask. That would include ICE, right? And other states have done this. They are not allowed to wear a mask unless there's an immediate health risk. And then prohibiting any state or local revenue from being used for activities that violate our right to due process. I think there's one more list here, continued. Okay, prohibiting censorship and book bans at our libraries, prohibiting the activity of any state or federal armed military force within Michigan without the permission of the governor, and prohibiting immigration enforcement from operating in protected places. So those include hospitals, schools, churches, courts, right? We know right now that there are people who are not going in to provide testimony against someone who has harmed them, abused them, because the witness is afraid of being detained by ICE. So yet another example of how ICE is making our communities less safe, not public safety, but making our communities less safe, in contrast to our own dedicated public safety forces. So again, going back to, and you can just, pause here for a moment. I want to point out that my Republican colleagues are trying to require local law enforcement to use their precious resources to coordinate with federal immigration enforcement. In the most recent budget, House Republicans tried to tie our state investment in our communities. Investments like fire trucks, lead service line replacement, community center renovations, and more directly to immigration policy. So they are trying to coerce our municipalities into coordinating with ICE occupation, which our public safety departments are not equipped to do, and which the vast majority of our municipalities have stated they are not interested in doing. Taking it back to Minneapolis, Minnesota for a bit. So right now in Minneapolis, Department of Homeland Security agents outnumber local police by nearly 5 to 1. The contrast between ICE enforcement and local police is clear. Local police are far outnumbered, the ones who have sworn to protect the safety of the communities. The resulting chaos and terror that these ICE patrols are causing has cost local law enforcement over $2 million in mandatory overtime. And again, that's city resources, not state resources. You guys do not receive the type of funding from the state to account for that kind of drain on local resources. And by the way, I believe that this is not only a drain that's unintentional, but it is intentional, that this is making our cities less safe intentionally. My Republican colleagues are pushing for us to coordinate with ICE, and they are imposing this unfunded mandate. And they are also damaging the trust that our local law enforcement departments have worked painstakingly to build since the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis. So my colleagues and I, we take this threat to our peaceful communities incredibly seriously. And an example is in September, Rep. Brian Gins introduced a bill that I was proud to co-sponsor, which would prohibit any state or local law enforcement agency from entering into an immigration enforcement agreement with the federal government. That was on that list, HB 4941. And again, in conclusion, ICE is not a public safety agency. Under this president, they have become rogue actors manipulated to impose a political agenda. They have no authority to arrest U.S. citizens based on racially motivated suspicion over their legal status. And yet, we know that more than 170 American citizens have been detained in 2025 alone. The Trump administration is sending its surrogates out to demand that legal residents carry their papers and submit to immigration checks. They're weaponizing federal agencies against political foes to bring Trump's opposition to heel. And to illustrate that, we saw that in Kristi Noem's letter to Governor Walz, implying that it wouldn't be so bad if he revealed his voter files to the federal government, right? We see the direct impact between ICE and demands on releasing voter files. Something that Michigan has in common with Minnesota is that Trump claims that he won the election in both of our states in 2020. So I am showing up and speaking out, not because I believe it's a matter of if, but when ICE ramps up in Michigan, as they are occupying Minneapolis right now, what I saw in terms of the impacts on public safety, on people's willingness to go out in public. I talked to business owners that are going to soon need to close their doors because their workers won't come to work, their customers aren't coming. 70% small businesses are the business just isn't coming in. And it is devastating on Minneapolis. And I just want to do what I can to let you know what I'm seeing and what we can do in Michigan to prevent this kind of unchecked assault against our communities. So what we do right now will determine whether we continue to live in a country we can recognize by the end of this president's term. We must work together to hold this administration accountable, to reject authoritarian activity in our communities, and to ensure that the power and money we entrust to our leaders is never abused. So, while some of the activity that we're seeing at the federal level requires a state response, I'm also not turning away from working on other issues that matter in Michigan. So now I'm ready to transition to what we planned to do two weeks ago, general year in review. So here's my 2025 legislation and one from 24. The first one, 5696, would enforce existing laws regarding excessive vehicle exhaust noise to be updated so that our local law enforcement could enforce the laws as they were designed. This is what our local police and public safety chiefs are asking for to help address noise on Woodward. So really grateful for the partnership of Chief Kane on this one, also Chief Gruey from Birmingham, Chief Moore in Royal Oak. They have been fantastic working with my office to make this vehicle code update as strong as it can be. And now just trying to find the right time to introduce it so it can be successful when we bring it back. Now moving on to 2025 legislation. This is all legislation that I introduced this term. So we have a sales tax exemption for firearm safety devices. This was part of the safe storage package that we passed in my first term. And this, I'm partnering with a Republican who hates paying taxes and me who wants to keep firearms away from our kids, right? We found a common ground to promote this. It's already been through the House with bipartisan support. and I'm hopeful that it will get through the Senate in the weeks to come. I have House bills that would permit tasting rooms to allow patrons to bring dogs into establishments. And this is Dog and Pony Brewing, right? Thanks to Kyle for letting us know that a simple fix to our definition of food in Michigan would allow dogs to be permitted into establishment. It would be up to the owner. Nobody would be forced to allow dogs in their establishment. I've got a lot more to say about this. And you should be surprised how controversial things like this can be in Lansing, but it has been a fun one to work on. And I'm grateful for Kyle for coming to Lansing and testifying on that one. That also passed out of the House with broad bipartisan support. The next one prohibits wage discrimination based on previous compensation and credit history. So this is part of a renter's bill of rights. You guys know well what we do to protect property owners in Michigan, right, with Headley, making sure people aren't getting taxed out of their homes. With property values and rent prices increasing, there's even more strain on renters now than ever. And a package of bills, the Renter's Bill of Rights, would help give renters some basic protections like mine that we need in Michigan. Next one is protecting healthcare professionals from assaults and expanding use of assisted outpatient treatment. So healthcare professionals, especially in the emergency rooms, in OB, they are experiencing assaults more than ever as our medical system is at a crisis, partly due to those extreme cuts in Medicaid. We see increased physical assaults on healthcare workers. And that results in good workers leaving the field, having trouble recruiting and retaining people. And ultimately, the patients suffer because we don't have enough providers in those tense situations like the emergency room and the OB departments. So my bill would make it a felony to assault a healthcare worker. That takes the burden off the healthcare worker from needing to decide to prosecute and file the complaint. It also clearly articulates a process for determining if that assault happened due to a behavioral health crisis. We do not want to criminalize behavioral health. So that requires them to get assistant mandatory outpatient treatment, the care that they need. Right now, when a healthcare worker is assaulted, nothing happens. And these bills will require follow-through, penalties or treatment, depending on the situation. The next one is establishing good cause eviction standards in Michigan. That is also part of the Bill of Rights for renters. So you can go on to the next one. Okay, now time to talk about the budget. So I asked my team to do a typical budget timeline and compare it to what we experienced last year. I don't need to read through all of both, but I want to point out a few just general things. In the past, in my first 2 years in the legislature, we had a fairly democratic process for the budget. I serve on the budget committees, both last term and this term, appropriations, right? I'm part of subcommittees this term for public health and for environmental protections. And last term I was on public health, school aid, joint capital outlay, nobody knows what that is, that's okay. And another one, oh gosh, I should have listed those. Anyway, appropriations, like I was intimately familiar with the process. We would go into our subcommittees, we would hear the estimate from the financial forecasters, how much money you would have to spend. That just happened last week, 2 weeks ago, recently. I'm looking at Ross, staff me here.
You got it.
Last week, very
Yeah.
recently.
Yeah, you're
they
good.
told us how much we're going to have to spend. It's not as much as we had to spend this year. It won't be a big surprise to you. And then we hear the governor's rec. That we expect to hear next week. The governor's team tells us how she thinks we should spend the money that we have. And then we go into our subcommittees and we're given targets and we bring in testimony and we ask questions and we offer amendments, and it's done in some sort of public way. That did not happen last year with Speaker Matt Hall in charge. First of all, he completely blew past our own self-imposed July 1st deadline. That matters to municipalities because, as you guys all know, you have a July 1st deadline for when you need to get your budget done. But now we are not even following our own self-imposed rule, and that passed during Republican control to say that the state government would have our budget done by July 1st. He completely ignored that. Eventually, we even blew past, not too far, but October 1st, we had to do a stopgap funding, kind of a pause, and we eventually got a budget on October 7th. But there was that huge chunk of time when cities had to have their budgets done, when schools had to have their budgets done, when you guys were waiting to hear from us to know how much money you'd be getting from the state. That is very harmful for our communities, and I'm just, again, trying to raise awareness. I hope it is not that as bad this year as it was last year. And honestly, a part of that is just because this year, for non-stateside purposes, people want to be in their districts, and I'm hoping Republicans want to be in their districts too, and they'll bump up the timeline a bit. Not because I want them necessarily to be in their districts, but because I want them to get their work done, our work done, in time for you guys to do the work that you need to do. So I will continue to uplift that and push for us to follow the typical budget deadline, meet our responsibilities. You can go on to the next slide. Okay, so fiscal year 2026, we saw, I already talked about this, local road funding. We saw an increase in K-12 foundation allowance and an increase in the public safety trust fund, but then we saw decreased revenue sharing, decreased behavioral health and disability services, and decreased legislatively directed spending items. You can go on from that. Thank you. So here is what we ended up with for 2026 estimates for Berkeley. So K-12 funding allowance, we did see, a 2.4% increase per pupil for Berkeley, for Berkeley schools. I feel the need to note that it could have been a little bit more. Another thing that the Republicans did was increase some funding for our students, but said that the schools would only get it if they signed away their rights for representation if there was ever a school shooting. And for a 1-year temporary boost of funding, they would have to sign away their rights indefinitely. So most school districts, including Berkeley, did not take that horrible deal and therefore lost out on school funding that never should have been tied to giving up right to representation in the first place. Again, increase for local road funding, but decrease to revenue sharing. You can go on to the next slide. So my spending item requests for 26 included $1.2 million for lead service lines in Berkeley, $6 million for the Detroit Zoo water infrastructure improvements, and I do want to note this would have been toward the George W. Kuhn drain, which I see a lot of nodding, right? Also impacts Berkeley because that's where our water flows, and keeping that in good running order helps us here in Berkeley as well. And then $12.5 million for green stormwater infrastructure that would support municipalities alleviating burden on existing stormwater infrastructure all through our region. So those were my top priorities, my top legislative spending item requests. But as you probably noted, the Republicans decreased those significantly this year. I did not get any of those awarded. So I will keep trying what I can to bring money back to our district. I do believe that with the current Republican leadership, I will be unlikely, unfortunately, to bring that back, partly because of the positions that I'm taking to stand up for our shared constituents. Cancellation of state work projects. This happened right before the holidays. Our House Appropriations Committee on 12/10/2025 was a big surprise. Even the Republican members of the committee, as far as we could tell from the looks on their faces, had no idea that this was coming. You think I'm exaggerating, but again, Ross was paying attention. And he's a
Totally true.
yeah. They just cut. They clawed back $650 million. This was money that had already been negotiated, already signed by the governor, already promised to our communities. And they just decided they wanted all of these projects to have to come back and justify it again. So they cut it from the budget. And that included money that I had received in 2024 for Judson Center. It included $3 million for Wayne C's Innovative Maternal Health Network that I advocated for, and $400,000 for the Troy Historic Village. That one was not one of mine. That was one of my colleagues. But let's see. So, yes, we'll fight to get this funding back. The good news is, too, our fantastic Attorney General, Dana Nessel, did issue a statement saying that these clawbacks were against the Michigan Constitution. We expect most of them to be sent out. There's a little bit of gray area in terms of whether or not money has been encumbered. So if a project has, if a municipality or the Judson Center had not yet spent the money, they had not yet received it, they were waiting for it, there's some of that that's still up in the air. But these I do expect, due to our Attorney General, not the actions of our Speaker, to eventually receive the funding that they were promised. A little too late for some of them, but important. Better late than never. Okay, you can go on to the next one. So my main priorities for this year, to strengthen our public health infrastructure. And I said, like, the protections for assault for healthcare professionals and volunteers, better wages and benefits for direct care workers. That's my number one thing for the budget, big picture for the public health and DHHS budget, right? Our direct care workers, the ones that serve some of our most vulnerable patients, don't make as much as the Starbucks employee down the street. It's an incredibly stressful job, and they're not being paid wages to keep them. So when we all get to the point where we need that extra direct care, there are not enough workers to do that care, to help us with feeding and bathing and taking care of our most vulnerable. And I believe, and that money is determined by reimbursement rates from the state. We need to increase those in order to help take care of our constituents. I also feel strongly about investing in maternal infant health. We've seen this, the Republicans put this on the chopping block again and again. Unfortunately, this has been politicized. I can't imagine why, but I will continue to advocate for it, making sure that we are not only taking care of our moms and babies, but dealing with the disparities, the incredible racial disparities, not income, not education, but racial disparities that we see in terms of the health care that moms and babies receive. We need to collect, analyze, and act on gun violence data, right? This is the #1 public health crisis for our children. It has now surpassed car accidents as the leading cause of death of kids, is death by firearms. So we have to treat it as the public health crisis that it is and invest on protecting our kids. Number 2, protecting and building out Michigan's clean energy future. Getting utility lobby money out of elections, right? Top priority. And I've sponsored a package of bills, ratepayer protections that directly addresses this in the legislature. We need stronger oversight, independent engineering audits of utility performance. We need to prioritize grid integrity as data centers come to Michigan. It's probably the one thing I'm asked about the most right now from constituents is what is my position on data centers, and I'm happy to tell you here. I have a voting record of being no on tax incentives for data centers, a no on tax cuts, sales and use tax for data centers. I have signed on to public letters to the Michigan Public Service Commission asking for transparency and for public comment to be allowed when data centers are being asked to be fast-tracked through our process. I also was one of just 2 Democrats who voted against a major state incentive for a data center in Ypsilanti last year. So why is that? Well, I believe these data centers have these huge conglomerations, these huge entities behind them who can afford to pay their fair share. They want to come to Michigan for our fresh water, for our climate, for the great union workers that we have ready to build their construction projects. Fantastic. Well, they can pay their fair share. They need to pay their taxes. They need to pay for their site prep. They need to pay for the improvements to the grids, both the electric grid and the water infrastructure grid, because these data centers rely on a lot of electricity and water. And if they are not required to pay for those improvements themselves, we see in other states where those costs are passed on to the ratepayers, to you and to me. We don't get to negotiate our rates. Those costs get passed along to us. People are already struggling with their rates, with their groceries and their prescription drugs, housing costs are huge. And adding a burden from data centers that are being, again, driven by corporations who can pay their fair share is not something that I am willing to vote in support for. The other thing is, again, the clean energy goals. Last term, we became the leaders in the Midwest for setting goals for renewable energy and to decrease our impacts on our climate. And if we do not require data centers to make real, measurable commitments to invest in our clean energy grid, we will be completely ignoring the goals that we set last term. And that's another thing that I can't vote in support of. And then the other thing is union labor. Yes, we have great unions who are ready to build those projects, and I need to see the data centers make commitments to use union labor if and when they come. So you may hear folks accuse me of being completely anti-data centers. And no, I would love to vote in support of data centers as long as they're paying their fair share, as long as they're protecting our environment, and as long as they are supporting union jobs here in Michigan. And then finally, of course, I was a high school English teacher. Fully funding our public schools is the reason I ran in the first place. So addressing school aid fund. Okay, college and university local. Let's talk about that for a moment. You guys made the mistake of telling me I'm like the only thing on the agenda, so I feel like I could talk for an hour. But this is important. This is so you'll hear a lot of times in Lansing we talk about holding schools harmless, right? We're going to do this tax cut, and we're going to hold schools harmless. I've been pushing for, if we're going to message on schools, let's message for municipalities, right? Let's talk about holding the municipalities harmless. They often, it's harder. It's a lot harder to hold municipalities harmless when we do a tax cut. Partly because when we say we're going to hold the schools harmless, there is a loophole that means it's just for messaging. And that's the way that our school aid fund works. Our school aid fund covers all of our K-12 schools, but then it can also be used for dual enrollment and for some community college programs. And when we see a deficit to the general fund, which we're anticipating this year, right? We just had that Consensus Avenue estimating conference. When we see that the general fund is going down, the school aid fund is going up a little bit, well, I can promise you what will happen is we will just use more of the school aid fund for dual enrollment and for community colleges. So even when we do hold schools harmless, people think that we're protecting our K-12 schools from the impacts of tax cuts. But unfortunately, what happens is we just spend more of the school aid fund on dual enrollment in community colleges to alleviate the burden on the general fund. So that's another thing I advocate for is like get rid of that loophole. In the Michigan Constitution, it should be a clear distinction, K-12 funding, and then the rest of the general fund. So, and dedicated revenue for municipalities should be, is another thing I'm advocating for. Okay, you rushed me past my final point, but that's okay. No, I gotta give another point to schools, right? We've got public education partners who, there was a study that came out recently pointing out our infrastructure needs in our schools. This is part of why our schools are funded in such inequitable ways right now. We do per pupil, right, which is the same whether you live in Detroit or Birmingham or the Upper Peninsula, you get the same per pupil. But then we fund our facilities, you guys all know we vote for school millages, right, based on the local property taxes. And up to 20% of per pupil can be used for infrastructure improvements. So when we have schools, like I represented last term in Detroit, Coleman Young Elementary, where they don't have heat in the winter or air condition in the summer, when they didn't have pipes that were safe for the students to drink out of, so the teachers were bringing bottled water. Like, we need to be investing in those schools, and if the state isn't investing directly, that money is coming out of per pupil. So then there's less money to spend for the teachers and the resources and the textbooks and the public safety of those schools. So I just want to point out that that is another top priority. And I do have a package of bills that I'm working right now with 482 Forward, a great community advocacy group out of Detroit, to try to address making our facilities safe without doing it in an equitable way. So that is the end of my slides. I do just want to let people know that I'm around, I'm available. There's my email address and my office phone. Please reach out anytime. I just had a community conversation or town hall last week at the Huntington Woods Library that we turned into a Know Your Rights training with the ACLU and the Michigan Immigrant Rights Center. Unfortunately, we had to send people away from that. That's never happened before, but we had over 100 people show up, and I heard only after it happened. I was actually in Minneapolis when it was going on, but my staff told me that not everybody was allowed to come into the room. So I did want to get the word out that we will be doing more of these. Our Democratic caucus is planning these to be virtual multiple times a month for a few months. So there will be upcoming opportunities for people to get on and get that same training through the ACLU and through Mark virtually. So if you sign up for my newsletter or you send my staff an email letting them know that you want to be known when the next Know Your Rights training is, we will keep you updated, and there will be no limit to how many people can attend the virtual training. Myself, I have my next virtual town hall is next Friday, February 13th, Friday the 13th, easy to remember, at 11 a.m. on Facebook Live. So I do these once a month. Spend your lunch hanging out with me, type your questions, and I will sound a lot like this, talking to myself for an hour, but answering your questions, which will be more interesting than what I have to talk about myself. And that's it. I just want everybody to know where to find me. You can use my office for so much more than just legislative updates, right? If you have an issue that you care passionately about that you want to advocate for, reach out, let us know. If it makes sense for me to sponsor a bill or to do some research or to advocate for it among my colleagues, I will absolutely do that. We also do constituent services. If you're having any trouble navigating a state department, if you're having trouble with unemployment claims or getting a permit through EGLE or applying for a grant, send us whatever you are feeling is not moving quickly enough, and we can use the power of the letterhead to uplift your request, uplift your issue, and make sure that you're getting the help that you need from the state. And then the other, major thing that we do is advocate for appropriations. So if you feel like the laws or the resources coming into your community are not serving you well, reach out, let us know, and I'll do what I can to be your voice in Lansing. Been a lot of time talking. Thank you, Council. I'm not allowed to take questions, but I'm great. Or am I?
Yeah, well, from Council, you sure can.
Okay.
No, we really appreciate you being here, and you did a lot of talking because there was a lot to say. And we are very appreciative of all the good work that you're doing and the good information that you're bringing us back from Lansing and your time in Minneapolis. So, so thank you for that. Questions, comments from Council? Councilmember Hennon.
Yeah, I just want to, well, again, thank you for coming, and thank you for what you've been doing for us and for Minneapolis as well. Just want to emphasize for the people at home the constitutional versus statutory revenue sharing, and that it's, there's a pie that the state must give us, and then there's a part that's discretionary, and they shifted that percentage, so there's less that they must give us. We're getting about the same amount. But we've seen this shell game before where the shell game they play with the school aid fund is exactly the kind of thing I'm anticipating that'll happen. We are made whole right now, but when things get tight and we're headed into that situation, that discretionary money is going to, the locals are going to be the first ones that it gets taken away from so that the city can, or the state can stay whole before they do their own cuts. So it's something we have to watch out for in our upcoming budget and talking about funding as well. So
You're absolutely right. And there's another element of these shell games that I neglected to mention, which is one-time funding versus ongoing funding. So another problem we saw in the budget this year, both for the schools and for municipalities, was reducing commitments to ongoing funding and making more of those one-time, which we also see the Republicans, at least last term, trying to just cut blanket all one-time funding. So I share your concern for municipalities this year, just like for the schools.
right. And with there's no strings attached on the constitutional. We're seeing with the statutory, they can do things like clawbacks. They can do things, well, they can try clawbacks even though they're unconstitutional. They can, tie cooperation with ICE, things that our community do not support.
Yep.
And so yeah, it's not a good way for them to be doing business with us. So.
I agree.
Councilmember Baker.
Thank you, Your Honor, and thank you. I echo my colleagues' appreciation for your time tonight and for the great work that you do for us in our region and across the state. I think that's fantastic. And yeah, that's great. From a timing perspective, I really appreciate that you were just over in a neighboring state, talking with them about what's going on there. This is probably only superficially about illegals because, as we know, Minnesota has about 130,000 estimated illegals, whereas Texas has over 3 million, and they're not doing anything in Texas of note like this here. So I'm just curious, based on what you've seen, the conversations you've had, what kinds of things can we tell our residents who are worried about the door-to-door knocking and the infringement upon a potential infringement upon First Amendment rights and just the general state of where things are headed? Anything that you can bring back to share with our folks as we kind of, like you said, be more and more alert of what's going on out there?
Yeah. So, and before I get on to some of the things that I saw in response that I wanted to bring back and share, I do want to address this question or the point that you made that this is not about illegal citizens. One, in addition to talking to community organizers, I sat in on a state Senate hearing while I was there. They had experts from the ACLU there to present on rights and offer some legal opinions on information. And one of the state senators from Minnesota asked if the Truth Social posts from the federal administration were viewed as directives to enforcement. And yes, there has been legally defined precedent that Truth Social posts are received and carried out as directives. She then held up a Truth Social post that called for 100 million immigrants to be deported. There are not 100 million immigrants total, legal or illegal. So there has been a directive to ICE to get rid of more people than just immigrants. And I think that recognition that everyone, what I experienced in Minneapolis and Minnesota is that your legal status did not necessarily determine whether or not you felt safe. All people of color, especially now that there's also been, federal Supreme Court ruling that you can be profiled based on how you look, your language, right? Now that is allowed, there is a real fear of being taken, being detained, even if temporary. You're being taken away from your kids, you're being taken away from your home, taken away from your work. That fear is something that many, many people, not just immigrants, let alone people who are no longer documented, are feeling right now. Now, the hope that I experienced was just all of the community folks who were stepping up to find ways to help. And I saw and heard of things that I never would have thought of before. One of the things in Minnesota, all reps and senators, the day they're sworn in, become notaries. I know. I'm like, wow, we should do that in Michigan. The rep that I talked to, he's been a rep for over a decade. They don't have term limits like we do either. He had only used his power of notary a handful of times until this year. In the last 6 weeks, he has used it 70 times in communities where parents need to sign over parental rights to some other trusted adult because they're afraid that they will be detained or deported before their kids come home from school. And kids are now kids mostly of color, right, have wristbands saying the number of another trusted adult whose parental rights have been signed over in case their parents can no longer come and meet them. But that idea of reps and senators coming in community and just offering the service. If you need to notarize another trusted adult to take care of your kids in case you get deported, that's something I could do for you, right? I talked to a grocery store owner, Mexican grocery store in a very Mexican area of town, who just people weren't coming to get their groceries anymore. So he increased deliveries, but he couldn't keep his employees coming to take care of the deliveries. So people that look like me, right, white privileged woman from the suburbs, signed up on Sign Up Genius, like we do with our PTA, and started packaging up deliveries so that his groceries could get to the members of the community who felt unsafe leaving their houses to get groceries. Another sign up sheet for somebody to just keep the door locked at all times so that if a customer comes in, the door gets temporarily unlocked. And then again, privileged white woman from the suburbs standing there just keeping the door locked, because if ICE comes, then no, you don't have a warrant, you can't come in. And that allowed people to feel safe to come grocery shopping, workers to come and come back to work. So those kinds of opportunities for those of us when and if we do feel safe, to step up, to sign up, to just be a presence to help protect our neighbors and community members of color is gonna be really important.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Okay. Any comments, city manager, anyone? Before I close. Natalie, thank you.
Thank you.
Great to see you.
Thank you.
Just, keep, as I'm going to quote Mike Dean, keep on keeping on, his favorite Joker. But really, what else can you do in this moment? And I appreciate all the great information you're bringing back to us. If people want to know, more what you're doing, follow your Facebook page, like when the Facebook Live is, when the virtual town halls are going to be, that kind of thing.
On Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, TikTok, all the things.
All the things, all the
Twitter.
platforms.
Yes, but yeah, Facebook stateside, Facebook is the best place to get all the updates about town
Great.
halls.
Okay. God bless.
Thank you. And I just want to thank you guys. Again, this is home. This is where me and my kids are. We feel so safe, partly because of you all and your support for our local public safety. We are so grateful that the team here has taken the oath and does such great training to do what they can to keep our community members safe. So thank you, Berkley, for being our safe home. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Ms. Mitchell, please read item number 3 on tonight's regular agenda.
Smart Specialized Services, fiscal year 26.
Ms. Van Vleck?
I'm going to invite our Recreation Superintendent, Dan McMinn, to introduce this item. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and members of council. This is one of 3 funding sources that we get from SMART every single year. As usual, it is coming in a little bit late. The contract period is from October 1st of 2025 to September 30th of 2026. We will be receiving the same level of funding that we got last year, which is $23,202. Again, this is one of 3 funds that we're receiving money from SMART to help run our senior transportation program. You will notice in this contract there is a one-time supplement of $17,778. This is from the SMART Finance Department. They found funds from previous fiscal years and passed them along to the municipalities. A little bit about our program. It's a Monday through Friday service. We run north-south boundaries of 8-mile to 16-mile, east-west boundaries of Lasser to John R. We take people to doctor's appointments, grocery stores, salons. We'll take them to Kohl's if they want to, as long as it fits within our schedule. We have been very busy lately, so I always say you need to call at least 2 days in advance, but we're suggesting calling a week, potentially 2 weeks, whenever you get to get those appointments. You can make those appointments by calling the Parks and Recreation Department at 248-658-3470. One more time, 248-658-3470, Monday through Friday between 9 and noon. You will speak with our front office clerk, Josh Bull, who is responsible for scheduling our drivers. I'm going to thank them now. Brian Boland and Mike Milligan do a fantastic job for us running the seniors to and from. They get busy. They do it with the most grace they can. And then I'm also going to thank our senior program manager, Josie Modrak, who is responsible for the program as a whole. She's done a fantastic job with this program in particular. As I said, we're getting busier. We've been busier. Just turned in last quarter numbers. We had 500 vehicle hours. We drove 4,561 miles, and we had 1,032 passengers. So we're busy every Monday through Friday. Again, make a reservation in advance, 248-658-3470. Cost for the trips suggested donation of $3 for one way or $5 for a round trip. And that's what I have for you.
Thank you, Mr. McMinn. Is there a motion?
Yeah, let me pull it.
I have a question for Steph
Oh,
first.
sure.
The motion proposed is that the city attorney has some concerns regarding section 11 of the contract. Do you want to address that?
Yes, section 11 talks about indemnification, and the city doesn't have authority under the law to indemnify any third party. And that could also cause you issues with your insurance carrier, your risk management. So we always review those, and we have communicated with SMART. We have worked with SMART with other communities, so we knew what we were going to be able to get. We got the best we could from them, and they did make some modifications which we can live with.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the Smart Specialized Services fiscal year 2026 contract subject to the resolution of the city attorney's concern regarding section 11.
Motion made by Councilmember Patterson and seconded by Councilmember Hennan.
Sorry.
That's all right. Okay, comments, questions?
It's an amazing program every year. It grows and grows. And like former council member Vellani once said, it empowers people to get out of their house and connects them with our community. Can't say enough great about this.
Thank you.
Councilmember Alrod.
And as I was walking in with Councilmember Hennan and Representative Price, and we were mentioning that this might have been something that could have gotten buried in the consent agenda. So I'm so glad that we're highlighting this, because these are the small things that make cities great. And as Berkeley, we care. And talking about the very serious things in Representative Price's update, it's nice to also know that there are good things that are being done at a local level that support residents, and I'm glad we highlighted it tonight.
Definitely, thank you. And I'll just say, it is that community and connection that is so important. Loneliness, isolation is a big factor, so the ability to get out, to be with other people is critical. So I thank you and your drivers and Josie very, very much. Any public comment on this agenda item? Okay, Ms. Mitchell, please call the roll on the motion to approve.
Hennan,
Yes.
Patterson,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Elrod,
Yes.
Gavin,
Yes.
Dean.
Yes, the agenda item has passed. Ms. Mitchell, we're at communications. Who goes first?
Councilmember Patterson.
Okay.
I get excited. I never know when it's going to be my turn first. So thank you for allowing me this victory. ZBA, February 9th was canceled. There was no cases, so there won't be any ZBA meeting next week. If you were thinking there would be, it was canceled. So the Parks and Rec, the Winter Fest update, due to the forecasted frigid temperatures and vendors backing out, Winterfest has been postponed until February 28th, also a Saturday, from 12 until 2. So Winterfest won't be this weekend. It'll be February 28th from 12 until 2. We're looking forward to a great afternoon of family fun and hopefully some warmer temperatures where everyone can enjoy it, but not too warm. I don't want the structures to melt. Next meeting, if you were sad that the ZBA was canceled, the next meeting for the Parks and Rec will be the 17th of February at 7 p.m. Last meeting we had some new faces, some actual residents came out, so hopefully we'll have some more out this time. It always makes it more enjoyable for the board to have the community engaged. So that's all I got.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Your Honor. Very briefly, the next meeting of the Berkeley Chamber of Commerce is tomorrow, February 3rd at 5:30 at the Berkeley School District Administrative Offices. And the next meeting of the Library Board will be February 18th at 7 p.m. at the library. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Baker.
Cool, that's me. Thank you. The Berkeley Historical Committee meets next week's Tuesday the 10th. And for more information on our great history and their work to help preserve and promote that, please visit berkeleyhistory.com. And our Downtown Development Authority Board meets the very next day, next week's Wednesday the 11th. And for more information on what events are coming up, please visit downtownberkeley.com. And as a quick side note, the Berkeley Days Committee meets this week's Wednesday, so look forward to seeing the additional work going on to help celebrate the 100th anniversary of Berkeley Days, which will be really cool. Quick shout out to our Department of Public Works, all the great people there who just go about business taking care of these water main breaks, especially in the sustained cold, terrible weather that we've had out there. And with that in mind, as we look to do, snow shoveling and things like that, keep in mind that February is Heart Health Month. And it was Charles Schulz, a famous cartoonist, who once said, "Exercise is a dirty word. Every time I hear it, I wash my mouth out with chocolate." Now, that's not something that I'm sure is super health smart for your heart, but I'm trying to eat more fruits and vegetables and exercise and all that jazz. And so if that's something that you're interested in, having your heart health, at least look into that a little bit, see what you can do. And as I mentioned earlier, especially given all the snow and everything out there, terrible weather, please be careful of the ice out on the roads and sidewalks, and be sure to please hug somebody you love. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hennan.
Yes, the tree board met last week, and the Arbor Day Foundation has again recognized Berkeley as a Tree City USA. It's, I forget the exact number, but 30 plus years in a row, and we've also received the Growth Award again. There were 129 trees that were planted this fall, and then the remaining 71 that we have budgeted will be planted in the spring, and that includes replacing the trees that were moved around the library. And their next meeting will be Monday, February 23rd at 7 p.m. at the Public Safety Building. And then the Planning Commission meeting next will meet on Tuesday, February 24th, 7 p.m. here at City Hall. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Elrod.
Minor brief as well. So Environmental Advisory is meeting Tuesday, February 17th at 6:30 at Public Safety, second floor. Beautification Advisory is the following week, Wednesday, February 25th. As always, these are open to the public, so we would welcome anybody to join. And for Environmental Advisory, as we stated in our last meeting, we are welcoming 2 new members, so that is exciting.
Thank you. Ms. Van Vleck.
Nothing tonight.
Ms. Amame.
Nothing, thank you.
Okay. Well, I have just one brief communication. The view from Coolidge is a little different now, as the former auto parts store is now the beautiful new restaurant, the Beverly. And I had the opportunity and pleasure to have a meal there last Thursday evening. The vibe is warm and welcoming. The food was so delicious. Staff was knowledgeable and friendly. It felt great. There's also bar seating. They don't take reservations for the bar, but it would be, I think, fun to belly up to the bar and have a meal there if you couldn't get a table. So I just want to thank Chef Travis for choosing Berkeley. I'm glad that you drove by that auto parts store, the vacant auto parts store, and I don't know how long it took you to decide to make it a restaurant, but I'm sure glad that you did. I wish you much success. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion made by Councilmember Patterson
Second.
and seconded by Councilmember Elrod. Ms. Mitchell, would you please call the roll?
Baker,
Yes.
Elrod,
Yes.
Gavin,
Yes.
Hennan,
Yes.
Patterson,
Yes.
Dean.
Yes. The Monday, February 2nd, 2026 meeting of the Berkeley City Council is adjourned.